Welcome to Unlock 360, the podcast for champions of public education. Here we explore the connection between leadership, teaching, and learning, and reveal the keys to getting better results for all students. Each episode highlights a change maker who's turning vision into action and creating schools where both educators and students thrive. Welcome back, everyone, and I am excited to share that we have another first for you today. Yes, I know I've said that the last few episodes, but indeed, we have our very first guest from the beautiful state of Minnesota joining us today, Jamie Bente of Faribault Public Schools. Welcome to the show, Jamie.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'd like to kick us off by just sharing with the audience a little bit about your role. So Jamie has been the superintendent of Faribault Public Schools since July of 2022. And in this role, he oversees district operations, he oversees strategic planning and vision, and ensures all students have equitable opportunities for equitable outcomes. Jamie, would you share with our audience a bit about your journey that led you to becoming the superintendent of Faribault Public Schools in
Yeah.
Minnesota?
So I'll start with thanks. I'm honored to be the first one to represent Minnesota. I mean, we're sitting here. It's May 5th, and I will tell everyone that yes, it did snow in Minnesota today.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
not here where we are, but a little further north it did. So, yeah, I started way back in 2000. I had a degree in history from Mount Union College. It's now the University of Mount Union, and that was in Ohio. Moved out to Minnesota. I didn't know anybody. At the end of my first summer, I was building doors in a factory, and I got a phone call, and I went in for my interview. And about halfway through the interview, I said, I'm not sure if I'm in the right interview. And they said, oh, well, we saw that you have a minor in German, so we want you to be our German teacher, our English teacher, our yearbook teacher, and our school newspaper teacher, along with coaching some sports, all with your social studies license. So that was an interesting first year for
I
me.
bet. Yeah.
Yeah, it was lots of ask my wife, lots of tears, lots of I'm not sure if I can do this type conversations, in the evenings, but made it through it. Landed a social studies teaching job in Richfield, Minnesota. Taught there and coached there and was a dean of students there for 12 years. Then I had the opportunity to come to Faribault to be the assistant principal at the high school in 2013. I did that for 3 years. Then I was lucky enough to be able to move to the principal role of the high school. I did that for 6 years. And then now this is my 4th year being the superintendent here. So I like to tell people I've held every position in education from a para substitute all the way up through superintendent, and I've hit pretty much everything in between. So that's kind of my educational journey.
And that is so helpful for the seat you now sit in, having that variety of experience in your background. And wow, what a first year. That does sound rather challenging.
It was taxing. It was, living in a new state, being newly married, having very, very little money, living in an apartment when I had grown up in the country. There was just a lot of life changes that hit me all at once. And then trying to teach, 3 things that were not my licensure area. It was an interesting year. So
I bet. Yes. Okay. Well, and Superintendent Bente, I'm wondering, when you did step into the role as a superintendent there, having served as a high school principal, like, what were some of the big, like, differences in general, not specific necessarily to, your district and what you noticed at the district level or across the schools, but in general, like, what were some of the big differences in shifting from principal to superintendent?
yeah, it was a really kind of unique, but in I look back on it and I say very helpful transition because I had been in the district for was that 9 years before moving into this role and had a couple different roles in the district up to that point. I knew most of the people in the district, so I knew and had worked with the cabinet members. I knew and had worked with the coordinators. Those relationships were already set. One of the pieces that I had to figure out was, though, that I was running a district and I had only ever been a high school teacher, a high school administrator. So all of a sudden I had to understand and realize how all of these different programs from pre-K all the way through, high school all meld together and how they're all part of the district and how they all work and play off of each other. So that was one of the pieces that I had to almost overcompensate my time and my efforts to focus more on middle school, elementary, and pre-K And I don't want to say ignore the high school, but kind of say, all right, I understand how that works. I got to focus on how these other ones all play together in that as well. So for me, that was really my first couple years, was understanding. I have a great understanding of high school. What is my understanding of how all these other programs feed into that?
That is really insightful. I appreciate that, and I imagine our audience will as well. I'm thinking of quite a few folks I know that have stepped into leadership positions at central office, where they may be directors or maybe even assistant superintendents, and they kind of struggle to do what you're talking about. And I've seen the opposite, where they gravitate to the thing, the area that they know most, and kind of get stuck there because it's most comfortable. So that's super insightful, and I can see that being really helpful to kind of push your like.
Yeah, I learned a lot of valuable lessons that first year. I would say the number one was that if you go to the preschool setting during the lunchtime, you're going to walk out with peanut butter and jelly all over you because they all want to give you the hugs. And so I went through quite a few suit jackets that year.
Yeah. Aren't they just so sweet, the littles? I mean, they're just so sweet.
Yeah.
They're still just so loving, yeah.
Anytime I say, "Oh, I'm having a bad day," and I've had other superintendents tell me this, "Oh, you're having a bad day? Go to kindergarten. Spend some time there.
Exactly.
Spend some time in pre-K. You'll walk out with a smile on your face," you know?
So true, so
So
true. And then having stepped now more specifically, stepping into the role and, learning more about how everything worked across the district. What were some of the specific areas or that you saw that were maybe challenging or that needed improvement
yeah,
within the
one of the
district?
things that we had what I and still struggle a little bit with this here in Faribault is we had pockets of greatness. Right? So we had pockets of greatness where we were like, wow, we should be out on the tour selling this, bottle it,
Yeah.
sell it. And then we had other areas where it's like, oh geez, like we need to kind of definitely beef that up. So it was and really we were very siloed across our district. So our elementaries operated as totally separate entities from one another, different handbooks, different almost rules, and so we had very much standalone buildings. It was almost like we were running multiple districts.
Okay.
So really, what I saw as the need coming in was very much the idea of that we need to unify under one district, and we need to have systems in place. We need to have procedures in place that are not just for one building, but are for the entire district. And we're still working on that. So 4 years later, we're still working on that. I was actually just talking to our HR director a little while ago, and I said, "Here we are, 4 years later, and there are some people that are still just now saying, you know what, I think this is a good idea. I'm in." You know,
Okay.
so that was the number one piece coming in was understanding that we need to form a district rather than just kind of like a confederation of schools.
Okay. And you all are currently serving approximately 3,000 students, correct?
Yes.
Across how many campuses?
So we have two elementary sites, which are grades 1 through 5. We have a pre-K and kindergarten center. We
Okay.
refer to it as our early learning center. We have a middle school. We have a high school. We have an online academy. Excuse me, and then we have our area ALC.
Okay. All right. So quite a few different campuses. I'm thinking about what you shared, and would you say then that the district was really, um, allowing each of the schools to just kinda do whatever they wanted to do? Was it super decentralized?
It was very decentralized. Yeah, it was very decentralized in the sense that it was in some places it was working, and in other places it wasn't.
Okay.
And that was the hard part. In the places that it wasn't working, it was, those people were saying, yes, please tell us what we need to do. Come in here and put rules, put expectations, do this, do that. For the places it was working, it was a hard sell because it's, hey, back off. What we're doing is working. And it's like, I understand that. We understand that. But at the same time, we're part of a team, not just one individual building. So there was very different needs, no different than your classroom is. Where
Right.
you gotta you gotta figure out what each individual student needs. It was the same thing, figuring out what each individual building needed, what each individual leader needed to get their building to the area that we felt was needed to be part of the district.
Mhm. Okay. And now you're working to become more, would you say more centralized or maybe somewhere in the middle?
We have taken the stance that we want to err on the side of being more centralized, and then backing off if we feel that we have the need or can do that. But we're kind of looking at this pendulum swing and saying, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it all. And then once we feel that we've accomplished that, then we'll decide where we can hand some things back to our individual buildings.
Okay, all right. And I'm thinking about another piece that you mentioned around campuses, or maybe even within campuses, there was some silos. What are some of the ways that you all have tackled that? How are you trying to change that culture?
Yeah. Some of it was honestly, we went through a reorganization. So when I took over, we had 3 elementary schools that were kindergarten through 5th grade, a middle school, high school, ALC, and an online academy. So what we had is we've had declining enrollment. We've had open enrollment, which is a thing in Minnesota. There's a statute that you can attend any public school. You just have to get yourself there. So I could attend a public school that's 3 hours away from where I live. I just have to get myself there every day, right? So we went through the idea that there's declining enrollment. Our forecast is showing that we're not going to receive more students in the future. It's kind of flatlined. So our buildings were running at much lower numbers, and our financial future was not looking well. So we need to downsize not only our physical footprint inside of our city that we operate, but we also need to be more efficient with how we're operating our buildings as well. So that was when we moved from 3 elementary schools to 2, and then an early learning center, which allowed us to put all of our pre-K and all of our kindergarten under one roof together. So that mixing some of that really spread across that greatness. As we know, when you have pockets of greatness, what we're really talking about is pockets of great people that are doing great work. Right. So that helped spread that sum across the district. The other one was elevating it and really sitting down with our data and saying, hey, I see that for the last 3 years, you are growing students in your room. The other side of that coin is sitting down with other teachers and saying, I'm looking at the last 3 years of data and realizing that you are not growing students in your classroom. Here's someone that can help you with that. Uh, whether it be a coach or whether it be a teammate that is maybe teaching the exact same grade level, but it's intentionally calling that out, not publicly, but privately, and saying, and here are the people that you don't even know can help you. So that was, the first part was the reorganization. The second part was then that intentional piece of sitting down and saying, these are our pockets that need our attention. These are our pockets that are doing well. How do we get these two to play in the sandbox with each other?
Mhm, mhm. That's great. And I'm thinking about the reorganization piece and wondering, when was that? When did you all do that?
So this is our first year of being reorganized.
Okay.
So we had talked about it for goodness. I was still high school principal and they were talking about doing it.
Okay.
And it finally just got to the point where we had put a plan together. The board wasn't really sure about it. They voted it down, and then literally in the exact same meeting said, we voted no on this, but please bring us another proposal. And the proposal we brought back, then we went a whole nother year. They put it in place. So this past fall was the first year we started with our new reorganized district.
Okay. All right. So you're coming up on the end of the very first full year
Yep.
of this reorganization. You know, I'm thinking about, we have quite a few superintendents, assistant superintendents, even principals that tune into our show. And I'm thinking about how many, I mean, they're everywhere, in so many places. I shouldn't say everywhere. Most districts are having to face some of these challenges, that you mentioned, and many that I know are talking about, or, moving forward with plans to close schools or restructure. What lessons have you learned? What insight, advice, what can you share with us that may be helpful?
Is do your homework, take your time, get as much public input, community input as you can get, educate your board members, and then have a good communications coordinator. I have a wonderful one that can keep their eye on social media to help you get out in front of the misinformation as much as possible. So we did it here, and there were all kinds of, I'll just call them threats that, well, I'm not going to send my kid to that school, so I'm going to withdraw and Well, we're sorry to hear that. That did not happen here. But I do know another school in our conference that reorganized the exact same way we did and lost about 40% of their students in one grade level. Understanding that there is always that possibility, but that, you're looking at it from, we always look at what is best for our students. And we truly, that's what our playbook says. It's one of the pieces that we follow is, when we come up against a tough decision, what's best for our students? First and foremost, what's best for our students, right? Before our community, before our teachers, before ourselves, what's best for our students? And really what we came up to was that having our pre-K and our kindergarten all split across the entire district with the size of community we are was not what was best for our students,
Okay.
because there was a big disconnect between pre-K and kindergarten. There was a big disconnect between all the different kindergarten teachers and what they were doing. So our piece was have a much better cohesive um, piece with our pre-K and our K all under one building, having all of those teachers and professionals there together, that they can PLC together, they can work together, they can get our students off to the best start together, and then pass them into elementary. But so that was my advice is do your homework, get public input, make sure your board is educated, and then definitely have someone keeping an eye and ear on social media, and then be willing to address those.
Okay. Thank you. That's, I'm sure, helpful for many to tune in. Superintendent Bente, I'm also curious about you just mentioned something around your playbook, and you had shared with me before the show that the district recently kind of revamped your vision. Will you talk, tell us about that. Tell us about the playbook. Tell us about the new vision for the future.
Yeah. So when I right as the former superintendent was leaving and I was coming in, we had gone through some culture of excellence training. And one of the pieces that came out of this was that we didn't really know who we were. We didn't know what we believed. We didn't know what we wanted to do, or how we were going to get there or any of that. So we decided to come up with a playbook. And really in that playbook, there were four main areas that we addressed. We talked about why do we exist? We talked about how do we behave, what we do, and we will succeed by. So those were the main areas that we addressed, and we then put examples in there of each one of those, showing and listing this is what it looks like. So when we talk about that, we are professional. Part of the how do we behave? We are professional. What does that look like? Well, we have high expectations. We are present and we are fully engaged. We're solutions oriented. We don't come with problems. We come with problems and possible solutions, and that we are always motivated to learning and grow. So we went through each one of those and really laid out, not only like, is it just words on a paper, but here is the expectations that we have for every single person that works for us. And I told the staff when I rolled it out, I said to the all staff meeting at the beginning of the school year, I said, your job is to not only hold each other accountable to this, I said, it's to hold me accountable to this as well. I said, so if you see me doing something that is outside of our playbook, you are expected to call me out on it, And I've had a couple people say, Mr. Bente, I hate to say this, but, you're not really viewing that from positive intent. And I'd have to look at him and say, you know what, you're right. Let me rephrase that. So it's really kind of been that binding thing that has brought us all together to say, this is what we believe here. This is what we do here.
Who was part of that? You say we worked on this and we
Yeah.
developed this and we really, spelled it out. Who was part of that?
It started with a cabinet. So our cabinet members are Director of Human Resources, Community Education Director, Special Services, which is mostly special ed and EL, Director of Teaching and Learning, and then our Finance Director. So it started with them, but there was also then strong input from principals, from coordinators and directors across the district that, we said, all right, here's a framework. Putting the framework together was easy. But then what took the longest time was, well, I don't like that word. I want this word instead, because this
Yeah.
word means this to me, and this word means something different to me, and having those conversations around the table. And while that took a long time, it actually was really a relationship building opportunity for us, because we got to really see people say, my dad used that word, and here's why I like it. Or my grandpa used that word, and here's why I don't like it. And being able to say, oh, okay. So we spent much more time fine tuning it than we did actually building the structure of it.
Yeah, and I can imagine that in addition to relationship building, that it helped develop a lot of clarity around what was meant by a certain word or phrase, or statement in the playbook.
Yeah. Because we all have mission statements and a lot of us have them on our walls. And it was, while that's a great mission statement, what does it mean?
Exactly,
How
yeah.
does it break it down? What does it mean when we say we will elevate? What does it mean when we say we have expectations? So we said, well, let's define it. Let's tell people what it means so that we can then, have a higher level of accountability within our district for everyone.
Mhm. I'm wondering, for my own sake and possibly some of those tuning in, when you say playbook and then you say, like vision, mission, are they one and the same then for Faribault? Or is the playbook more of like how you're gonna do the things
So
that you're
our
after?
mission statement is really that, dare I say, generic. It's not generic to mission statements, but it's that generic statement. It's these are the words we have on the wall that guides everything else. So it is like you talk about the overarching umbrella. It is like even above the overarching umbrella, in my opinion.
Okay.
When we get into vision, we here look at it more like vision plans. What
Okay.
are our vision plans? And we actually redid our vision plans last summer, and we had 5 at the beginning, and now we broke it down to 6. So, the first one is enhancing student achievement. Our second vision plan is maintaining and growing our financial health. Our
Okay.
third one is enhancing high quality facilities, then advancing high quality technology. We decided to break those apart, especially with the AI piece coming in. Fifth one is grow professional development and resources. And then the sixth area is effective communications. So,
Okay.
and then we put what are our expected outcomes from there. And then below that, what are our strategies for achieving those? So that when we talk about vision, we're more talking about vision plans. And honestly, with the vast majority of our time, we usually spend the majority talking about our first vision, but then behind the scenes is a lot more work on the other visions.
Okay, yeah. So that's more of the strategic plan or the vision plan, for the district. Got it. And then the playbook?
The playbook is like our overarching, it hangs on our walls. It's that thing that we're able to reference. It's almost for dare I say, like the 10 commandments.
Okay.
It's that piece of, hey, let's redirect back what our playbook tells us to do here. It's there for to ground us, to guide us, and to help us work through difficult pieces.
Okay. All right. Good. And then I also want to go back to another piece you mentioned in the conversation around restructuring. And you spoke about professional learning communities amongst kinder and first grade, I mean, pre-K and kinder teachers. And I'm just curious, like, what are professional learning communities like in Faribault?
They're kind of all over the place. So when I talk about pockets of greatness, we have pockets of professional learning communities that are doing great work as grade levels, sitting down, going through student data, going through the questions of, what do we want the students to know? How do we know when they learned it? What do we do when they already know it? Those pieces. But also then is we want to also extend that beyond just that grade level. So we want our first grader and our second grade teachers working together.
Sure.
So we're really we're starting that with our pre-K and kindergarten, having them really work together and say, okay, what is it that you need to do in pre-K so that when our students come in kindergarten, we can hit the ground running with. So that's really our first jump into that crossed grade level PLCs that
Okay.
we've and I'll be honest, we've just started playing with this year. We come up against the same obstacle over and over and over again, and it's that terrible 4-letter word,
Time.
time. Yes.
I knew where you were going with that. Okay, so that is my question. What's built into the time that they have?
Yeah. So we changed our calendar a few years ago. Now we run what we call Falcon Days, roughly once a month. But usually a Friday or a Monday, where students don't come in and staff have the day for some professional development, some PLC time, a little bit of building time to keep the principals happy so they can do their staff meetings. You've got some training that happens in there. So we've gone to that model. And while it's great, it's still not enough time.
No, yeah.
So it's we keep kind of beating our head against the wall trying to figure out how do we draw out every single minute we can get try to give to people so that they can work with each other and learn from each other.
So at any given campus, they would have time once a month for maybe an hour, 2 hours?
Yeah, they usually get about 2 to 2.5 hours. Yeah.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it's not ideal, but it's working for now. We got to figure out something that will maximize that in the future.
Right, right. Yeah, it is tricky. What do you think makes Faribault Public Schools a great place to be, to work, and to go to school?
I'm going to say a statement and people are going to scoff. I'm going to say that Faribault Public Schools is one of the, if not the most unique districts in the nation.
Okay, tell us
And here's
about
what
it.
we are: a strong 45 minutes south of Minneapolis, St. Paul. All right. Probably pushing more like an hour. We are a rural community. We are, in our school systems, 30% Black, 30% Hispanic,
Okay.
30% white.
Wow, okay.
All
I
right.
love that diversity. What a great mix.
With the vast majority of our Black being Somali.
Oh, okay,
So
interesting.
we don't look like anyone around us. We are more diverse than Minneapolis public schools.
Okay.
And we sit out in the cornfields. We
Yeah.
we sit on a highway. We have a wonderful industrial group and manufacturing part in town. We have just about every, from blue collar to white collar, you name it, and everything in between. But we look demographically more like a city of 500,000 to 1 million than we do a city of 24,000 people.
That's wonderful. Yeah, that's really
And then when
cool.
you look in town, we have 2 private schools, we have 2 charter schools, and we have a like an international private school.
Okay.
So not only do we have our diversity, but we also have lots of competition for our students within our
I
own town,
guess so, yeah.
as well as we house the academies for the blind and the deaf for the entire state.
Oh, wow, that's very interesting.
So it's
Okay.
just people come here and they're like, "Is there anything that you don't do?" You know.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I guess wow, that is really interesting. I have never been to Minnesota. Never
it's
been.
beautiful for those 2 weeks of summer.
Okay, to and you said it snowed today, Cinco de Mayo. We're filming on Cinco de Mayo, and you
In
had
northern
snow?
Minnesota, it snowed today, but I will say my first year as assistant principal, we had a snow day the first week of March. We had 13 inches of snow here in
Oh
Fairfield.
my gosh. Wow, that is something else. Okay, well, very, very unique. And Jamie, I don't think I've ever met anyone from Minnesota. So not only have we not had a guest on our show from Minnesota yet until today, but I don't know that I've ever met anyone from Minnesota. And I just thought that was so weird because I'm born and raised in Fort Worth, Texas, but I lived in Houston, Texas. I went to school in Central Texas, moved to Southern California, lived there, have served in over 7 different states, districts, around the country. And yeah, how is that possible? So I shared with you, I think before the show that I had asked Siri, what time it was, I said Faribault. Forgive me if you're tuning in from this beautiful city. Um, and I also was looking up to try to understand how is that possible? Because I've met a lot of people in my life, and I came across some information that I want to dig into a little bit more, but I'm curious what you think. That led me to believe that not a lot of people leave Minnesota. Maybe more so recently, but that it has a high like retention rate. Is that what are your thoughts on that? I know it's a little off topic, but
I don't know. I don't know if I'm authorized to speak on this because I'm a transplant to Minnesota. I grew up
oh,
in Eastern
okay,
Ohio.
okay,
So after college, I moved out here. So I've actually lived here now for 26 years. I will say one of the things I was not prepared for when I moved to Minnesota was it had that very tight knit feeling. Like it was difficult to work my way in. And people said, "You talk funny. Where are
okay.
you from?" And I was like, "Ohio?" Like I never heard someone from Ohio that said they talked funny. But I will say Minnesota is a beautiful state. Okay, it is a beautiful state. We have wonderful natural resources here, wonderful lakes, wonderful people. We've been in the news a lot lately, and just that there's a lot more to Minnesota than what you see, and there's a lot more middle of the road understandings in Minnesota
Of
than
course.
what you see. So I like it here. I think the education here is wonderful. Is I've raised 3 boys here, they're doing just fine. Minnesota's been good to me. So,
Were your boys born in Minnesota?
well, my boys were born in Minnesota. Yes.
And are they still there?
My oldest is a senior at South Dakota State.
Okay.
Middle son is a freshman at Iowa State, and our youngest will be a senior in high school this year here in Minnesota. So, uh,
Okay.
I will say they were all coming back here in the next 2 weeks when college is over to, uh, have mom and dad feed them for the summer.
Sure. Yeah, sure. Well, it sounds really, really nice, and, I hopefully I will get to make my way to your area one day, Superintendent Bente. If someone wants to, maybe they're looking for a new place to call home or, send their kiddos to school or a new place to teach or serve as an administrator, where would they go to learn more?
Our website is a wonderful place. You can go on to our website. You can also check us out on Facebook. Our social media presence as well. We post a lot of the pieces that we're doing there. So or reach out to us. Take take a journey here. We've got an airport here in town. Fly in, look around, and let us know what you think.
That's awesome. Okay, cool. Thank you. And then, last but certainly not least, I shared with you before the show that I'm trying to end the season with, a way to honor or give thanks or, just recognize someone in education that has made a difference in your life. And so I'd like to ask you, if there was someone who really had an impact on your career in education as a teacher or as a leader, who is that special someone you'd like to honor and why?
Yeah. So the guy I'm going to pick, his name is Jason Wenschlag.
Okay.
And he was the assistant principal at the high school when I became the dean of students. So we spent a couple years together. We became good friends. And he really was all about growing and growing principals, right? Before he was an assistant principal at the time. He then became the principal. He's been a principal in a couple different districts, a couple different building levels. But he really was the one that kind of took me under his wing, and was able to say, I'm going to show you how to do this and I'm going to show you all the great things that you're able to do as an administrator. And I just actually reconnected with him on Facebook a couple weeks ago because I saw he has a book coming out. So
Okay.
I'm not one to go out and buy a bunch of brand new books. I usually will hit up half price books and get, the old ones, but I actually bought his book, and it's called The New Principles Playbook. Um,
Okay.
and it's out. It's wonderful. I've made it about halfway through it, but he really was the one that kind of set me up. And he was the one, when I became principal, and you beat your head against the wall. And it's like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do next. I would pick up the phone and I would call him, and he would say, have you thought of this? Have you thought of this? So I really see him as my first true administrative mentor.
And his name again?
Jason Wenschlag.
Jason, I hope you are listening and sharing this with others. You should feel honored, and thank you, Jamie, for sharing that about him and the impact that he's had on your life.
No problem.
And thank you for being here. That's a wrap, everybody. Till next time. Thank you for joining us on Unlock 360. If this conversation sparked new thinking, share it with a colleague and keep the dialogue going in your school district. Public education is complex work, and progress happens when leadership and teaching move together. I'm Wendy York Davoud. Until next time, keep building the systems that unlock what's possible, because strong leadership drives deeper learning.